and Bodhicitta, how do they give rise to the Upakaya, the form body of the Buddha? So that is important to understand to gain a kind of comprehension of such. So in the scriptures, one should read the scriptures, the explanation that is given in the scriptures. One should read, depend on one's teachers and ask them and investigate oneself. So how and independent from those, then one is able to gain some kind of certainty. One needs to find certainty. And unless one does that, then it will be like Lama Tsongkhapa and Atisha and so forth are saying that otherwise we will go in a different direction.
지선 더 먹는 나로라 아니 되게 인생꾼도 가르치네 가르치고 있는 상황 전주심 틀에 된 거야지 이 순간입니다. 제가 다른 어제 비자사와 다디가나 이제 무시 타주는 디어레 전주 가서 남주 되니 된디 들어왔어. 들어와 남주 된디 들어왔어. 들어와요. 남주 되니기 된디 들어왔어. 들어와요. 이제 남주 되니기 된디 들어왔어. 틀에진 큰님 제법 맞지 맞지 틀에진스. 다 산지 이베디 샤요. 다 누구를 무치 시부지 자친구 시부지 담이 교부 시부지는 디 녀제 디 라수는 그뒤는 디 텐데로 왔어. 전에 대내 가르치는 클래스에 어디는 신친이 백이 심진된도 산지고 탑선바데 그뒤는 틀에 전거레스. 지성기 디 제비 최게 산지에는 뉴도 좋을 예를 좋으래서 어디 손을
So here in many sutras what is explained is that day and night, so 24 hours, one should again and again remember bodhicitta. So again and again. So there's this explanation where when continuously again and again. So Benjamin Tsongkhapa, the textbook author of some of the texts that are used in debate. So one is the text called the Decisive Analysis. In there, there's this line, and Geshe-la kind of said how it's kind of difficult to pronounce it kind of properly, so he kind of said it a few times. So basically this idea, without forgetting, in other words, again and again, repeatedly, to generate bodhicitta in one's continuum, to not forget, and again remind oneself and bring forth this mind of bodhicitta continuously, repeatedly. So it's a bit like similar, the comparison that is given is that when one finds a very precious jewel, at the time when one finds a precious jewel and loses it, in the same way as again and again one remembers losing that jewel. So likewise here, one should again and again remember bodhicitta, in other words, bring it to mind again and again repeatedly. So depending on the measure that one brings to mind bodhicitta repeatedly, to the same measure when we get closer to enlightenment. So likewise, when we talk about ordinary beings, so ordinary beings have the five senses. So these are what bring them enjoyment, the five senses. So likewise, we talk about five powers of that course. So the five senses are like the five powers. So likewise, the Buddha has five powers. The Bodhisattva has five powers. So there's mindfulness, there's faith, there's ethical conduct, there's morality, concentration, and wisdom. So those are the five powers. So mindfulness, faith, morality, concentration, and wisdom. So here of mindfulness, we talk about being mindful of bodhicitta. So the mindfulness here, it talks about bodhicitta in particular. So this illustrates that bodhicitta needs to be remembered again and again. So mindfulness here in the sense of remembering bodhicitta again and again, repeatedly.
Samba Prinzo Temba Dance, Samba Prinzo Haresina, any Casa, Simshenda Madebi, Chajuki Semdes, Dojina, Dison, Simshenda Madebi, in Chajuki Semdes, Samba Prinzo Sigres. Dayan Doshendajina, and the Simshenda Madebi to Haresina, that Jumdi Yichi Yorwa, Machibu Tabata was Samba Soba, Titi Kichi Simja Maki Bajin, La Chajusim Temba Dida. Simshenda Mateva Sigres, a Tison and Ducene Jesan, 다 삼박분서 제바당 송에 디차기도.
So then you also find these words about being mindful of the excellent attitude, excellent intention. So here, being mindful of the excellent intention without mixing it with any kind of mind. So without mixing it mixing it with any kind of other awareness, that is what bodhicitta refers to. So then in another sutra, one finds an explanation of what that means of not mixing it with any other type of mind. So bodhicitta referring to a mind that is not mixed with any type of other mind or attitude. Here it refers to the attitude of working for one's own benefit, that not even for a single moment one repeatedly again and again brings bodhicitta to mind, and in the meantime without having any sense of wishing to work for one's own benefit. So this is what it's meant with like not mixing bodhicitta with another awareness. So likewise, Islama Tsongkhapa has expressed in one of his writings where he basically says wherever everyone goes, if one goes to the market, whoever one encounters should think, may this living being be happy, may they find happiness. So therefore, if one encounters, when one meets, let's say 100 people, so 100 times one meditates on love, 100 times one brings to mind love.
Also kandeji di chanjang na chik chumja gegda 강내 맞지 치기디 요와다 되나지 대월주지 아니 마가스지들
Like when we go prayers, we do our prayers. Sometimes we jump, we say a certain prayer and we leave out another prayer. So likewise, it might happen that when we go to town and we meet certain people, may they be happy, may they be happy. Oh, that person I don't like. So we jump, so we go to the next person, may they be happy, may they be happy. So likewise, we may jump. Are there any questions? So, Venerable Nojana has a question with regard to positing, for example, a table, saying a table. So the question. So since, for example, a mere table is imputed independence upon its parts, when we place objects on a table, we are placing them on something other than the table. We place them on the parts of the table. However, when a person on the path of seeing who is absorbed in the meditative act of realizing emptiness, at that time, the person's contaminated seeds are not posited on anything that is different from the person, so any of the parts of the person. According to the scriptures, the sutric explanation is that it's posited on the mere eye. So how do those two differ? Yina tanda ko condition de karsna bena tholam nyamsha ishilane ba khansa di gula tanda dire bhakcha sakche mu yor bhakcha yora ta bhakcha shasa gi shi de nyamsha ishi chana di mares kais nyamsha ishi gi tendo chana nyamsha ishi samere ta ko sakche ma the do res ta kede di de lo mashana ta lu gi tendo ya shat mu dos ta de masha ba insa namge shung nana khansa tsam gi tendo yos da tsam gi tendo yos la yora di soyoras ra ta dini mitsu gunsen khares chotsi tsamgi dendu shae yo mares ine ta tsamgi dendu sha bombonga khangi dendu masha ose ta tsamgi dendu shana ta dinde ve ta tsamgi dendu shana ta de ro shi tu ba the du mende ta di pombo lo so da ne gu mende ko kan de shi de
那如果是这样子的话呢，在那个剑道会的那个本令当中，在这时候呢，正空会的这个剑道会的行者，他在这个令当中，他还是有一些有漏业，可是他的那个有漏业并没有办法放在他处于根本令当中的形式上，因为当时候这个时候在根本当中的形式是只有不漏的，它没有办法有漏。那我们会说，那这个有漏业又不能放置在它的身体上面跟上面上面，那所以我们会说，那它的那个有漏业是放在了唯我之上。那这个唯我之上，那为什么说我们会说我不能将那个桌子放在那个唯桌子上面，但是你却可以将一个不对其我有漏业放置在唯我上？那这两个说法是有什么不一样？因为当你讲说你可以将有漏业放在唯我上的时候，就好像感觉这个我是里面之外而有的，所以请接下来解释这两个譬喻的不同，这两个情况的不一样。
지단에 파긴 텐데기 바샤디 아니 통남바들 요르베스 요레라고 지고르다 좋아 통남바들 요레 아니 그래서는 디체다 무튼이 레고로 다 이거 유비다 바라들 잠체 이제는 슈르 용도 말와 디지도 전에 다 통남바를 요레시디 다 통남베 다시 가야로 와지 제네 디르 요제 통남바를 요스
So when we say that in general, when we talk about these contaminated aggregates, of course we have to say that these aggregates have to be based on the person who is on the path of seeing. So because otherwise we cannot say that these imprints are posited on that person in the words that this person possesses them later on, but not at the time when they're on the path of seeing. That wouldn't work. But Geshe-la is saying, so even though the person, him or herself, possesses those imprints, it doesn't mean that any of the aggregates have to have, or any of the bases of imputation have to have those aggregates have those imprints posited on them. That's not what it would mean.
유몽기 바차 미기위 바차를 뒤전에 때 참자는 와서 디켄자지도 바차디 다 유는 거네 암저 루샤르와 바차를 바차 제외버지 섬로 칸에 바차를 셈낭도를 바차 제외버지 섬로 콜데이도.
So when we hear non-virtuous imprints, we hear this again and again, non-virtuous imprints. So after some time, we get a sense there's some kind of substance there, something substantial, some substance there, which refers to these imprints.
그래서 당가를 유문지 깨는 유문대기다 균지 다 되어res, 그렇죠? 다 디바이네 디바산 디 균지 다 되어서디 균디 간이데레스라도 암상은 저 납치를 바차스. 그래서 바차스는 지 제외버지는 주의 생각하는 주의대로.
So what are actually these imprints? Actually, it's a type of residue. It's a type of something left after the afflictions have arisen, have manifested when they go out of existence, when they're no longer in our continuum, any kind of affliction stops being in our continuum, then there's just a continuum, some kind of residual kind of continuum that is still left. So this is what we mean here, that this kind of residual continuum that is still there, and that we give the name imprint. We very quickly say this is an imprint, and that is the sense then of some substance here. So this imprint, this residue, seems to be very substantially or something that is a kind of substance.
바샤 제유선로 커버 있는데 바샤디 거리등도 요라고 얘기요 말고 요래 따라래. 시바이나 시바디 거리등도 요라고 옵니다.
So when we talk about an imprint existing substantially, then we don't have to say where is it posited. It's a bit like consciousness. We say consciousness exists substantially, so we don't have to posit it on anything. So likewise, if it existed substantially, we wouldn't have to posit something on which it is left.
딜레디 바샤선다 뉴바. 뉴바선에나 민다리마다 간지 마마디 기비 떡기 치마기 기토그레스 계제들어다 지금 배워 계시나. 기토그레스라도 간제스 기토그레스는 뒤와신이 되기로. 아니 간디스 게토그레스 뉴바디 게토그레라나 아니 켄자이 차서 게토그레스에 뉴바스라르다 같이 들 민디다르다.
So when we talk about imprints, they're kind of potential, kind of potency. So we apply this name imprint to something that's a kind of potency, kind of potential. So if something has arisen before, has been generated before, then something else can arise now. So since something has arisen before, now something else can arise. So it's that kind of potency, that kind of potential for something to arise. So how does something else arise from that? This potential, what is it? It wouldn't be correct to say that the potential itself arises, but we still have to explain how this potential gives rise to something else that arises in the future.
That the Karsugure, that the link on this and any Kunshida, that Mjituda, Mangishe, the Duzayina, that Chu to get the Payam Soda Party, Yakam Hambajin, Chavache, Pachin, Yantigate Korajan, Yakam Zolatim, Tina Shimko, Dako more draws towards the Rata, Shivati more Chinya, Shivatinea to the Nile, Pitcher, Nile, Tibu, that the Tenesu Shar, or Tusi Shigoroda.
So when we talk about here in the with regard to the answer to this question, now so when we talk about the lower system, so for example, asserting a mind-based wall, for example, so there's this idea which is similar to the idea that first you have water that flows into the ocean, and then that water that flows into the ocean evaporates into steam, and then again these drops again they rain down and become water again. So there's this idea of like this cycle of phenomena changing into something else. They are consciousness at some point, then at some point they become the substantial cause, you could say that Geshe-la says, of consciousness, and again they keep kind of arising as something different. So there's that kind of change in terms of how they manifest.
Mobody that gauge never chadoro. She's on the ship to this and the shiboyores. A shibody midaba into shiduri, and the shiboyores. A shibishi to skin it, Tigubo to Tata Pagi. Some jures lower, that Tigubo to lay down the two race.
So now, from the point of view of the Paragika system, when we talk about the afflictions, for example, so the afflictions first they are there, and then there's the degeneration of the affliction. So that degeneration, that itself is itself an impermanent phenomenon that continues on, but since it is also changing, you have the degeneration of that, and then you have the degeneration of something else, and the degeneration of something else, and it continues on, until eventually, then you have a result. And the result from these degenerations, one degenerating, and eventually one comes to experience some kind of result. So this is from the Paragika Sutta.
먼저 돌랭지 거라 하시스나 시바스네 바자스네 시다 켜버리어 체민도스 시바스네 바자스 요 체시다 민도스 해도다 아 가시기 아니 시바스에디 바자디 딩도 요레스 세로 당에 섬지디 데다 바자디다 시비딩도 요버다 자로로 시바디 요 인자 아니 신기도 그레스 디치네 김원을 무시 치만데 때스 야도 소스 디카드들 렌데 직 트레인즈 가서 나이만 남지 카드 좀 캐러지는 거스 디카드 때스 캐러서 치만 때스 야도 소스 아 되겠다 나 드시지.
So here some say that this degeneration itself is the effect. Others would say that this degeneration exists on the imprint. So here actually what we're saying is that the generation exists, so therefore we have the imprint. And so this the latter explanation, so from the point of view of my own kind of view, I follow the latter kind of explanation. And His Holiness has also said that this latter explanation works better, and so this would be a case as we discussed before, when the question and the answer don't actually meet. But in this case here, the question and the answer have actually the question and the answer in this case of His Holiness saying that this is correct. So we could say that the question and the answer have met in this case.
在后者这个概念里面呢，就是我们说的习气在灭上。那由于灭本身是一个无常法，它 本身也会不断的生灭。那在这样子的过程当中，因为灭习气就在灭上面，那透过这个不断生灭的这个灭，它本身也可以到达果上面。
나한테 바샤디 시비딩도 여봐차도 그래서 시비딜 때네 디게 투그레스 이렇게 제대로
So yes, the letter. So here the degeneration exists on the basis of the imprints because the degeneration arises independent on that.
딱 가시기 마sam기 돈에 네 드시자고도 가시기 단주룰에 시바지 마샤는 뒤면도 수만없이 자고 가시기 시바레스 엔토레 뭐 제네 아니 정말 뭐지 담아들 짱지 저는 되기도 왔어 짱 나지 잘셔는 되기도 왔어 그래서 인지민지 되게 누샤고에 개미 됐어요 마sam기 돈에 드시자 시비 돈에 드시자 네가 요청을 했어 대사 맛에 아니 시비 돈에 드시자 저를 했어 김두샤고에 개미 됐어 무슨 뜻이야 배워라
So actually here we say, so some say therefore it is posited on merely the eye. So in the Prajnanika system, you say it's merely posited on the eye. Some say that it's part of the imprint as just described before. So there are all these different kinds of views one spine. Spines here, and his holiness response will say, one can say also, or alternatively. So this idea that there's no contradiction here, you hold these different views, so whether you say it is actually the imprints are found from the point of view of the degeneration, saying here it's just so there's just a mere eye. Another person says you have another consciousness, so you have to have a third consciousness that is active if that person's continued. So these are the different views. Either you posit it from the point of view of the degeneration of the afflictions, or you posit the mere eye, or you posit another kind of consciousness. So Son is saying, so for there not to be any contradictions, you say alternatively, as in it can be this or it can be that.
Wala kontra saja sidi kadere. Wala kontra saja sidi. Kontra saja. Semla kontra saja. Tashi karila kontra saja.
So when someone says someone got angry with me, what do they get angry with? Are they angry with my mind? Are they angry with my part of the body? What are they angry with when they get angry with me?
Wala tagi du landa tigdo subule tawal tene wala ta. Tina shin wala kontra saja sidi. Tene pungbo kaya runga chilo kontra sawa da tene wala kontra sa. Tue ayu, tue meba tewada.
When we say, for example, someone looks at me, well then it would make sense that there's like a part of the body that they look at. So therefore they say, I can say they look at me, because it's actually one of the bases of imputation, the body which they look at. But when they get angry with me, there's not such a sense that they get angry with the mind or the body. It just seems to be angry with me, so there's not a basis of imputation that they get angry with in that moment.
그래서 매나 나sam로 kontra 사르다. 라.
So if there's no basis of imputation, then so then we can say in that moment it's the mere eye, it's the mere person, the mere eye that one gets angry with. If there's not a particular basis of imputation, we could say it's the mere eye that they're angry with. So even the ordinary kind of situation like here with regard to the anger, we can say it's just anger, the person's just angry with me, the mere eye, where we can say definitely on the path of seeing that this is the mere eye on which the imprints are left. Other questions? Are there other questions?
Thank you so much for the teaching about generosity. I learned in the Diamond Sutra also say about generosity. There is one line of teaching say there is no mind of people who give it the people who receive it, and there is also no thing what to give. And could you please go John with your teaching today about that teaching and your teaching? And to me, look like it's related to understanding emptiness. Thank you.
Can I repeat? You're saying there's no agent, there's no giving, and there's no object. 그런 간대셔야 돼. 가르스마 안에 공부니 더지 계시라 드린 진변이 없는 거 골라지 송진나야 많이 투지는 주요. 아니 대단염도지 근데 코메마지라지 가서 추기도 선다지 도지서래 다디나는 양치 진변이 없는 게 골라야고 표성직 체내 다 디갑소시 아니 진바 동gen데다 아니 진배 차와다 아니 진배 유유데라 운딩이 된저 메바레스 다지 손 메바레스 온다 직다나 코 세브람 담마 총어레네 또 상단에도 돈이 단대와 예사레스 진바 보메와 진배 차하면은 진배 유메바디 온디코나 아니 얘나도 지 세제나 이게 단다데 진바 보메가서
진짜 가장 나대들에 민매를 민인지신 기제시에서 어디나 초진의 심지 동네와 심신기 다 동네나 수되게 삼도 땅니 또 동네 잡고도 신시 삼당고아래 초진의 다 동네 용이 심지 안에 동네 대참어랑 신기베스 삼당고아와 이니초
So this is similar to the explanation Geshe-la gave previously. So the compassion which observes the non-observable. So the compassion which observes the non-observable. Here, when we talk about compassion, one needs to think of the suffering of sentient beings, like the problems and sufferings and misery that they experience on one hand, but also one needs to reflect upon the nature of sentient beings.
디나시니 진바 땅사 진바 땅게 아니 진바 되게 되는 정신기 요마레스 마도 매번 계시는 지금부터요 바랍니다. 진짜 정신기 요마레스 되게 삼력이 터네 아니 이내 탄이도 여버 인상 그 지금부터 삼로 되게 터네 지금부터 근데 중바 있나 아니 지대는 대비 지금부터도 그래서 미미비 지금부터라 그래. 아니 되게 많이 배다 돈이도 비셔르기 마심비 터네 지금부터는 지대비 지금부터
So when we talk about, so likewise, having given that explanation, so likewise when we talk about the person who gives, the person who practices generosity, the giver, the action of giving, and the object of one's giving, so none of those exist inherently, they do not exist intrinsically. They do exist conventionally, because otherwise if they were not to exist conventionally, the act of giving could not take place. However, their actual nature, their ultimate nature is that they lack intrinsic existence. So therefore we talk about supermundane kind of giving, or supermundane giving, which refers to giving where this understanding, the realization of the emptiness of the person who gives, the agent, the object, and the activity is conjoined with the actual giving. Whereas on the other hand, if there's not some understanding of emptiness, if there's no understanding of the lack of inherent existence of the agent and so forth, so then if the giving, the act of giving is not conjoined with that understanding, we talk about mundane giving.
진바타와다 추륜송에다 두지기 토네 아니 하다미 류다 농지 두지 용해 점라 돈이 섬당고에 게미도 고태가 용고 다 이내 산지 입구 계제 시용도 전에 산지 입구디 먼저는 이 샤타 두지 풍부 두 개와連샤 주든지 말해 그 돈이 무슨도 비 샤랍 din이 수수 샤디 때다 뭐지 버스네도 din이 수수 샤디야지 지산다 제비 내가 수든지 주고도 다다 진보 추림 수바 되게 디야 라신기 동바 din이 다 진짜기 심지 진게 진바 딜레 샤르바지 된지기 섬도 토네 진바다나 산지비 줄다다 파게 지부는 춤버지 다다 저도고 알아 지산다 된지 섬당고도 동반이 숙소 어디 예비 토네 진바다고 알다 동반이 진바당사 동반이 진바당게 동반이 진바
So with respect to likewise the practice of generosity, ethical conduct, or morality and patience, well, actually the results that they bring forth, such as in the case of giving, for example, bringing giving material possessions, leading to a certain result, like physically and so forth, well, they come about naturally. You don't need to think about emptiness just from the point of view of those kind of ordinary results. But here we talk about the body of a Buddha accomplishing or achieving the body of a Buddha, which is not an ordinary body like our own body, made of just blood and bones and so forth. It's not this ordinary body, it's rather a body that is the result of the wisdom, and out of this wisdom appears a body. From the nature of this wisdom, then a physical body arises or is emanating. So therefore, in order for that to take place, the causes of generosity, the causes that give rise to such a body, which can be found in the practice of generosity and morality and so forth. So here we need to understand the actual nature of the agent, the object, and the act of giving, so that they can become the body of the Buddha. So we need to be thinking along the lack of inherent existence of these phenomena in order for the wisdom to give rise to a body of the Buddha. And if you think of the Heart Sutra, where it says emptiness is form. So emptiness is form. When you think of this line, which is basically saying here emptiness, the emptiness of the agent who gives, the emptiness of the object that is received, and the emptiness of the activity of giving. So then that is form. So let's leave it at that.